unconstitutional ones, and this is a letter he wanted read at all of the rallies. As American citizens, we have more rights and freedoms than any other group of people in the world. The founders of this country established these freedoms because they had previously lived in countries where the people did not have as many rights. One of these rights is stated in the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which proclaims, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." But over the years, various laws and regulations have infringed upon this right. The reasons for these laws are to get the guns that cause crime and injuries off the streets. But most of these laws have only prevented the common citizens from acquiring a firearm. There should be some regulation with regard to who can own a gun, but we need to ensure that this regulation is done in a fair and practical manner. The best argument for the protection of the right to possess arms is the Second Amendment. The purpose of the amendment and the entire Constitution is to protect natural-born rights that cannot be abolished or changed by our government. But the wording of the amendment has been a source of debate. The main argument is that the amendment only provides for militia, and that the right to keep and bear arms is referring to militia members only. But the amendment also states that it is the right of the people to keep and bear arms. In 1990, that question was answered in a Supreme Court case, U.S. versus Vertigo Uruguayez. This case was about a man who had committed a crime while in Mexico. The man argued that his constitutional rights had been violated, but the court ruled that since he was outside the United States when the crime was committed, he was not protected. During the case, the question of what the right of the people meant in the Constitution, the court decided that the people, protected by the Fourth Amendment and by the First and Second Amendments, and to whom rights and powers are reserved in the Ninth and Tenth Amendments, refers to a class of persons who are part of the national community. This decision clearly shows that the right to keep and bear arms is not exclusive to the militia, but applies to all United States citizens. Another argument is that the Second Amendment does not prohibit national and state governments from passing laws that regulate or even ban the selling of certain guns, but the amendment states that the right to keep guns shall not be infringed. This would imply that any action that would eliminate guns or that would restrict ownership to a very small section of the population would be unconstitutional. But there are numerous states, California, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, and so on, that have banned certain types of guns, including assault weapons and handguns. These types of laws do not just limit who can purchase a firearm, but they make it illegal for all citizens to own guns. Under the amendment, this is a violation of the Constitution. Although there is a heated argument over the Constitution, most all citizens will agree that there should be some sort of restriction on who should be able to purchase or carry a firearm. The gun laws vary from state to state, but there is a set of federal statutes that apply to all of the states. The most important of these statutes is the outline of what classes of people are prohibited from possessing firearms. They include convicted felons, fugitives from justice, unlawful users of certain drugs, persons committed to mental institutions, illegal aliens, persons less than 18 years old, and persons convicted of any domestic violence. Even strict anti-gun control proponents realize that these types of people should not own guns. We also agree with most of the other federal statutes with regard to who is able to buy, sell, and use firearms. Where there is a dispute is over Omnibus Crime Bill and the Brady Bill, plus many more unconstitutional legislations being introduced. The Omnibus Bill bans so-called assault weapons, and the Brady Bill imposes a mandatory 5-day waiting period on the sale of handguns. These types of laws do not only restrict firearm ownership to law-abiding citizens, but make it hard or even impossible for these citizens to access certain types of weapons. And as we discussed before, any restriction on the right for citizens to possess firearms is unconstitutional. In addition to the federal statutes, each state has its own regulations with regard to firearms. These range from states with almost no regulations, such as Wyoming, Alaska, and New Hampshire, to states like California and Connecticut that have very restrictive measures. As with any other issue, the individual state has the right to pass its own laws. But some of these restrictions are not simply restrictions. They are all-out bans on firearms. In Washington, D.C., for example, it's illegal to sell handguns and semi-automatic weapons, including shotguns and rifles. If a city is allowed to directly violate the Second Amendment by banning guns, what other amendments can be legally violated? Will the next step be to restrict the press or oppress certain religions? Obviously, this will probably not happen, but you can see the impact that a local interpretation of the Constitution could have. The idea behind these laws is that by imposing more gun restrictions, we will be able to reduce the amount of crime in this country. The most common form of gun control is the imposition of bans or waiting periods. But what gun control proponents do not realize is that these bans and waiting periods do not deter who they are designed for, the criminal. This is because the people who use their guns in crimes do not go to licensed gun dealers to purchase their guns. A survey of a sample of inmates of juvenile correctional facilities and inner-city high school students found that a large majority of them got their guns from friends, family, or other criminals. Another survey of prison inmates found that 4/5 of them felt they could get a firearm anytime they chose, after their release from prison even. In addition, these criminals stated that if handguns were not available, they would turn to other types of guns instead. Although this research does not prove that guns are uncontrollable, it does show that criminals can get guns whenever and wherever they want. The laws will only impede everyone else from acquiring firearms. Gun control advocates often point out that using a gun for self-defense is not a good argument for owning a gun. They feel that self-defense does not occur often enough to warrant owning guns for that person. This may seem to be a reasonable argument until you look at the facts. A nationwide survey showed that citizens use firearms in self-defense against crime 2.1 to 2.5 million times each year, and they use handguns in 1.5 to 1.9 million of those cases. In comparison, firearms are used in approximately 238,000 robberies and 14,000 murders each year. This would mean that people use guns in self-defense almost 10 times more than guns are used in crimes. Since criminals can get guns no matter what bans or restrictions are in effect, the only number such regulations will affect would be the number of self-defense cases. As we have seen, guns are used in a large number of crimes. But how can we reduce the amount of guns used in committing crime, while at the same time keeping intact the rights of the common citizen? One of the ways to do this would be to require everyone who wishes to purchase a gun to take and pass a gun safety course. Many states that allow concealed weapons require this type of test before issuing permits. This would be a one-time test and would involve a background check of the potential gun buyer. The buyer would then receive a card similar to a driver's license that they each would present to the gun dealer before being able to purchase a firearm. Under such a system, there would be no waiting periods and no bans on certain types of guns. Still, another program would be to impose harsher penalties for felons who use firearms in the course of their crime. Most people agree that some gun control is a good thing. Guns can be dangerous and should be kept out of the hands of the wrong people. But the Second Amendment provides a clear statement on what the government position with regard to gun control should be. But the regulations now are starting to conflict with the amendment. This would be a reasonable argument if crime has been drastically reduced, but that is not the case. The only effect that gun control laws have are to punish the common citizen. There should be some restrictions as to who can purchase a firearm, not what types of firearms one can purchase. This would ensure that criminals are left out, but the people that are legally able can have no restriction on their rights. David Clayton. Thank you all for attending today.
Great job. Thank you very much. I'm glad I didn't have to read that. That was good. Very good. Okay, next up is Todd Watson. I had a chance to speak with him here a while back and have a good conversation about the Constitution and how our rights are being eroded, and I was very impressed. But I want to introduce him. He's running for the Senate seat for Congress. Glad to have you here, brother.
No longer can see him.
What's up?
You no longer can see that.
Hey, Nebraskans, how we doing?
Thank you.
I'm just going to sit on.
You know, I was reminded this morning, George Washington crossed the river because he already signed his death warrant by signing the Declaration of Independence. It was freezing cold, it was frigid, but those troops made the battle anyways and made the trip. And so did you, because we're real patriots here for our constitutional freedoms here in Nebraska. It's time we take back the rights given to us by our Creator, take back our government, because we know what's best for this country. We want to make our own lives, and it's time. It is time. It is time.
Yes, it is.
Now, we have seen a continual assault on the Constitution here for a long time. The reason I've been running for a while and speaking for a while is to protect your rights. Because when you have your rights and you use them, America is great again. Now, let's talk about the Second Amendment. This year in a vote, I'm going to go to the Fourth Amendment because it's the same argument. Your government is spying on you and monitoring you daily. They know everything you're talking about. And our representatives took a vote and said, it's okay that you take away our privacy. Why? Security. The government will take care of you better. We need to make sure you're more secure. Now, what's the argument to take away your guns? Security. It's all about popular opinion. The government has no right to take away our privacy and no right to take away our guns. The Constitution is clear. The Constitution is the rules we, the people, put on the government before the government puts rules on us. You cannot violate it.
That's right.
But they think it's up to popular opinion now. I'm sorry, no it's not.
Oh.
The 5th and 14th Amendment, they're not allowed to deprive us of life, liberty, or property. But yet funding providers that take away life is okay.
Yep.
Passing motions to take away our property and our guns, hey, that's okay. It is not okay. That's why we wrote the amendments. Now, we have got a lot more violations going on, and we have to understand that a violation of one clause of the Constitution or Bill of Rights is an attack on the entire Constitution and Bill of Rights.
Yes, it is.
As Americans, we have got to learn to stand up for 100% of that document all the time, otherwise we're jeopardizing other rights. Friends, we have things that people don't even care about. Our senators did not ratify presidential treaties over the climate accords. Our electric grid, how we power our homes, was going to cost double, if not triple, with a full-on attack on coal. We never gave the president power to sign a deal in Paris that wasn't ratified by the Senate. They don't think they have to do their constitutional job. Our president can jeopardize our national security. give Iran all the money to build the arsenal they want, and our Senate goes missing. They don't ratify that treaty. It's wrong. Our pastors are not allowed to speak. If you liked Gary's speech earlier, let's give a big round of applause for Gary. The Johnson Amendment says no free speech for you, Gary, on issues of politics in the pulpit. Whatever. We have the right to speak, and our pastors can speak on whatever they will choose. That is the First Amendment, and we're going to defend it so Gary can keep changing lives in our city. Thank you, Gary. Now, we have congressional failure right now. Completely inept. We gave them very few jobs. Unfortunately, our Congress looks at the document right now and says, we are going to do everything you did not assign us to do, and we are going to do nothing you assigned us to do. That is how backwards we have become as a nation. Article 1, Section 8 is very clear. Here is what your job is, Congress. Do it. Everything not listed here is not your job. Leave it alone. Now, if the Second Amendment wasn't in there, which it is, we still have the Ninth Amendment. Everything that is not written in that document, you still have rights that are not even listed. We felt so passionately about the right for free speech, the freedom of religion, press, the right to own our guns, we actually named it. That's how strong we feel about these rights. But you have a multitude of rights that are not even listed in the Constitution. They're yours, not the government. Know that. And the 10th Amendment. We're all friends and neighbors here. We all have variable opinions on issues. But guess what? Where we have differences, we don't solve them at the federal government. We gave powers to this house, the state house, before we ever gave the federal government. And we gave powers at the local city council level to address our local issues. We have forgotten the structure in our federal government, and it needs to be restored back to its original power jurisdictional jobs. That's where they're lost. So, you guys are warriors. You came out today to defend the founding document. God bless you.
God bless you, sir.
We can win this together when we start standing up for what's right. When we start educating people on the Constitution. We live in a republic. Say it with me. Republic. 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 Do not fall for these lies of democracy. We are not in a democracy. We are in a republic. Do not fall for these lies of centralization of control. We never wanted that. Do not fall for the lies we gave power to one powerful person. We have restraints on power. There is a reason for that. We need our government doing less and our people doing more. And I want to leave you this word of warning. We love our Second Amendment. But here's the facts. The largest killer of humankind in history from guns is government. It's called democide. You can look around the world. The argument being made by liberals and rhinos is the same. We're going to trust the government with the guns to keep the guns out of your hands. This has been the action over the course of human history that has empowered governments to take human life. Democide is scary. We can't let it happen. We have our Second Amendment rights. I trust you, the people, my neighbors. Let's go take our Constitution back. Let's take our government back. And let's preserve our rights. And as the preamble calls, Our charge from our founding fathers was simple. We are to ensure the blessings which are gifts from God. Amen? 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 We are to ensure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, the next generation. Guys like you.
Yeah.
Do not look your legacies in the eye and say you failed. And I guess by this crowd showing up in this weather, no one's letting their legacies down. I'm not going to let your legacies down either. I have my own. Let's do this. Amen? Thank you.
Amen to that. Thank you very much, Todd. That was great. I want to introduce Kenneth Pancake. He's our next speaker. Kenneth, come on up. Looking forward to this. It's nice to have some young blood in here.
Hey, wait a minute. I'm talking about myself.
Whew. Man, you guys really are dedicated standing out in all this. This is encouraging to see people that are willing to stand out in 30-degree weather, in the wind, in the rain, to defend our Second Amendment rights. Amen? I want to thank everybody for inviting me to the NCCPA. Big shout out to Garrett, Jeremy, Trish, Alan. I'm really excited to be here. It's actually my first major speech, really. The topic could not be more important, but most importantly, I'm just honored to be in the same city as Scott Frost. First of all, I will confirm that my last name is indeed Pancake. I will try to use a short stack of pancake humor as I go. But I will warn you, my jokes fall pretty flat. Yeah. I'm here today as a simple college student. I'm not a student body president, nor am I a student body senator. I'm not a candidate of any kind. I'm not a radio host. I'm not a TV personality. Rather, just like any other normal college student, I write for the student paper. I work 2 part-time jobs. I play trombone in a jazz band. I struggle to keep good grades, and I'm learning that C's do get degrees. However, there is one key difference between me and the normal college student. I'm a conservative. I lead a modest Young Americans for Freedom chapter in Omaha with the simple mission of educating students about conservative values and starting a discussion on campus. In fact, all it takes is one display table with the sign on front that says, "We're pro-gun, change our minds," to see that my conservative values make me a little different than the average college student. Other than that, I'm quite normal. Well, I hear my mother laughing in the corner. Okay, maybe normal's going a bit too far. But there's a reason I'm here today, and that's because this normal college student has some concerns. I know that these concerns not only echo across my campus, but they echo across the state of Nebraska, and they echo across the great United States of America. I'm concerned that college students don't know why the Second Amendment exists. Justice of the Supreme Court, who got his job to defend the Constitution, is calling for the end of a part of it. It happens to be his birthday today, but I do not wish him a happy one. I'm concerned that when I walk onto a college campus, as a result of state law, I'm forced to give up my Second Amendment rights. And, well, some of my First Amendment rights as well. I think Katie Mullen here in Lincoln would know all about that. And while I'm on the topic, I want to say that I'm severely disappointed in Lincoln's new free speech policies. They've decided to take a few select areas on campus and designate them as public forum spaces. Now, we know these are really just free speech zones. And let me tell you where they should have drawn the boundaries of these free speech zones. It should have started at the Pacific Ocean and been drawn all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. This is an example of a bad solution that takes a problem and makes it worse, much like the devastation that gun-free zones cause. And that is what I'm here to talk about today, specifically to call for the real common sense solution, campus carry reform. Recently there was another shooting in a school in Maryland. Raise your hand if you heard of the school shooting in Maryland about a month ago. Okay, that's impressive. That encourages me because it tells me that the mainstream media is losing its hold on the American people, which is great news. Because let me tell you what happened at this shooting. A bad guy with a gun was stopped with a good guy with a gun. And the mainstream media tried to cover it up because it didn't fit their narrative. But regardless of what the media may tell you, this is the solid, hard truth. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. When we talk about campus carry, we find 3 categories of states. There's one category of 11 states that allow people on public campuses to carry weapons. States like the great state of Texas. How about a hand for the second best state in the union, Texas? Now, between the states, some of these points differ. For example, in Tennessee, only the faculty are allowed to carry. Now, the second category is states that leave it up to each individual university to decide. This is 23, almost half of the country. The third category are states that don't allow you to exercise your Second Amendment rights on public areas. Sadly, Nebraska is one of these last states. Let me tell you, I hardly trust my government to get me my mail in time, much less its ability to defend me against crime. In fact, the Founding Fathers said I shouldn't have to. You may remember the deputies and the school resource officer in Broward County, Florida, who refused to engage the shooter inside the school. And Parkland student Kyle Kashuv gave them quite a fitting moniker, the Cowards of Broward.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't feel like trusting them with your lives, do you?
No.
Not only should we have the right to defend ourselves, but history shows that we're better at it. A good guy with a gun who's already there on the scene will respond to the situation a lot better than a police officer that has to hop in his car, go through the rush hour traffic, and get to your location. In fact, statistics show that concealed carry laws can reduce murders in a state by about 8.5%. Correction, it's not that they can, it's that they already do. This reminds me of one of the silliest arguments I hear from the left, from publications such as the Mother Jones magazine and the Rolling Stones magazine. Their favorite argument, it's so bad, is that in every mass shooting they have studied, the shooter has never been stopped by a citizen with a concealed weapon. Does anyone else realize the flaw in this argument?
It's a lie.
So I'll read it again. In every mass shooting they have studied, the shooter has never been stopped by a citizen with a concealed weapon, according to Mother Jones and Rolling Stones. Well, it's flawed because that's the whole point. If there had been a concealed weapon on the scene, the shooting wouldn't have gone on long enough to be classified a mass shooting.
Right.
Yes, Mother Jones, we already know that there were no concealed weapons around these mass shootings. Thank you for making our case for us. Some people just need to wake up and smell the pancakes. I grew up around guns. My father used to go hunting before my childhood antics supposedly wore him out. I remember several nights when my dad would pull out a pan of homemade venison jerky for dinner. I also remember wanting to purchase an airsoft pistol. My father was much less enthusiastic about this idea than I was. And when my 10-year-old self asked him what the big deal was about, he said to me these words. He said, owning a gun, even just a toy gun, is a big responsibility, but it's necessary. And it took me until I grew up to understand what he was getting at. Not all of us in this country had the opportunity to learn this message, and as a result, some don't understand how deeply this right is a part of us. As the shooting in Maryland showed us, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Bearing arms is our God-given right as Americans. And concealed weapons in the hands of good guys is the most effective way to deter or stop an active shooter, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the left doesn't want to listen to this fact. They would rather trample on our Second Amendment rights, and I frequently hear the line, do you really need an AR-15? Do you really need an AK-47? Well, let me tell you, it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. The These so-called solutions from the left have only made the problem worse. A large majority of these mass shootings take place at soft targets, that is, gun-free zones. The worst part of this new March for Our Lives movement is that they want to go even further than that. And that is why I stand here in the cold with you patriots today and ask, no, demand, that Nebraska legislature and the Board of Regents adopt a constitutional campus carry policy. It is well beyond time that we bring the Constitution back to college campuses. We over at Young Americans for Freedom Omaha will be doing our part, holding more Change Our Minds tables, writing petitions, and putting the message out. We should all demand that our elected officials actually obey their oath of office, which reads, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now I want to say I'm proud of you all because you're doing more to fulfill that oath than half of our elected officials, let me tell you right now. In the face of daunting ignorance, we the people have a mandate to protect our rights. We need to call our Board of Regents. We need to call our state senators. We need to call our federal officials. Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is always just one generation away from extinction. Ladies and gentlemen, we are that generation. Let's pass it on to the next. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Good job, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
Let's give him a hand. Great job, fella. I want to introduce Patricia Harold. Patricia Harold is the president of the Nebraska Firearms Association, the largest grassroots non-profit organization representing the interests of citizens across the state of Nebraska, and working to bring about legislation that aligns with Nebraska's Constitution. She is a firearms instructor, a training counselor, and also volunteers at the Nebraska State Leader of the Well-Armed Women's Shooting Chapter. Yes. Yeah. Amen. The nation's largest nonprofit providing firearms empowerment and education to women. Patricia is a United States Air Force veteran, has served during the global war on terror and several deployments in the Middle East, and is now a Department of Defense contractor at Offutt Air Force Base. Widowed at age 37 with 2 small children, Patricia sought the training and education necessary to be her own first responder, and first line of defense of herself and her family. I want to add a duty that was given to men and women long before there was ever any government. And even though we hire other people to help us with that, it doesn't mean we're surrendering that duty or that right. She is passionate about advancing the importance and critical nature of active citizenship and involvement in the political process by all Nebraskans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Glad to have you, Patricia.
I am so very proud of each and every one of you. It's not the wind, it's not the rain, it's not the cold, it's not the travel that's going to stop us. It's the people who are fighting against our rights. And every time you take a stance and take some time to dedicate to your rights, we make a difference. It's not how much time, it's that you do it every time. How many of you know that by the will of the people, we amended our state constitution to declare, to clarify, and to establish as our will what we as citizens embrace and demand of our elected representatives? Did you know that we amended our state constitution by the power of the people? Are you familiar with Article 1, Section 1 of this state's constitution? Yep. Let me read it to you. All persons are by nature free and independent and have certain inherent and inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the right to keep and bear arms. For security or defense of self, family, home, and others, and for the lawful common defense, hunting, recreational use, and all other lawful purposes. How much more clear can we be? How much more specific do our elected representatives need to understand the will of the people? These rights shall not be denied or infringed by the state or any subdivision thereof. What is a subdivision? It's Lincoln, it's Omaha, it's Blair. Do you think they happen to maybe not understand that they're breaking our Constitution? That their ordinances and policies are unconstitutional? And when we go to the unicameral, when we go to city councils and we argue this point, do you know what they say? Sue us. And then when the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association attempts to pass state preemption of firearms with a small paragraph that says, we will have the right to sue you, and when you lose, you will have to pay us back. Oh my God, they're going to end the world with this little bit of law that basically reestablishes the rights we've already established in our Constitution. But they forget the other part, the end of this article. They derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Do you consent? No! Citizens of Nebraska, we have a unicameral comprised of senators elected by districts in your state. But you are the first house. You are your own representative. You are empowered, and I'm going to tell you, you're accountable and responsible for the work that in other states is done by elected representatives. For too long, we have assumed that our values and our traditions would remain respected and upheld and considered in the drafting, debating, and enacting of legislation that represents the will of the people. Do you feel represented? For too long, we have assumed that logic, reason, our Constitution will be enough to temper and restrict any efforts to infringe on our rights. And yet our freedoms in Nebraska are left to face a tempest of ignorance. That is the storm we're facing, not this weather today, a tempest of ignorance. I escaped from California. When I put my right up and made an oath to protect our Constitution, and when I moved to Nebraska, I became a Nebraskan. Fell in love with the state, fell in love with the people, fell in love with the traditions and values that you all uphold, and I'm proud to be a Nebraskan. Thank you. But we are surrounded by states with far more enumerated freedom. What? We are at the mercy of elected representatives and senators who deem themselves above the Constitution and above the will of the people and above the will of the majority. Well, why is that? Well, because we're kind of silent. We are unseen. We are no risk to their tenure in elected office. We are busy working and teaching and raising our families. But we can't do that anymore. We have allowed those who have no sense of personal responsibility, who wish to be coddled by an ineffective government to protect them and our children, to paint, shape, and control the narrative. By sitting back and staying out of the fray, we have allowed city councils, school boards, our unicameral, and the town halls. Anyone go to that one in Lincoln? Really? Come on. They ignored our constitutional rights. We have permitted them to set up landmines of infringements that prohibit you, as law-abiding citizens, the right to own, possess, and use, when necessary, the tools that protect you and your loved ones and your communities. The firearms community is represented by multiple organizations. It's represented by the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association, of which I am proud to serve as a volunteer, unpaid lobbyist. We fight every day for you. We join forces with other organizations like we have today to educate our elected officials, to present testimony in hearings, to correct falsehoods, and to counter the rising tide against us. But we are simply citizens, just like you, with lives, with jobs, with citizens, or with children and community obligations. We face an enemy, though, emboldened by the media, financed by billionaires, supported by corporations of whom simply wish to create a new world order where the power of the people is manipulated and controlled. Are you going to stand for that?
No!
We cannot sit back any longer and go on with our lives, venting on social media, at the dinner table, and in gatherings with people like us. We are in our own dang bubble, people. Break the bubble. We must take our energy and our time and our focus together as a unified voice to counter and shift the direction of our state and the country. Join us today. Make a commitment to your future and to the children who are our next generation. Add your voice to the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association and every single other organization who has joined forces today to talk. Learn how to be an effective representative of the Second Amendment and the traditions and values you hold sacred. Develop a relationship with your elected officials. Show up at hearings at your city council. Show up at meetings of your school board. Show up at rallies for those running for office. Make your voice heard. Write letters and make phone calls. Because now is the time to take a stand. If you spend 10 minutes a week on social media, you can write a letter to your elected representative. You can make a phone call. All the volunteers in the Nebraska Firearm Owners take vacation to come to the unicameral. I spend my own money, my own gas, and put mileage on my own car to come here to represent you, and I am proud to do so. But I am tired, people. When I go to lobby, there are 4 of us, and there are 20 of them. 20 emotional, enraged people who have no idea what they're talking about, and they spout false information, and they warp the minds of the people we elected. And they make those elected representatives afraid of the media, afraid of the bias, afraid of the manipulation. We must empower them. We must encourage them. We must embolden them. And you do that by showing up. Every time you show up, they imagine that you represent another 100 people. 5 people show up, 500 people. 50 people show up, how many people? A lot, because I don't do math in public. So again, I am honored and privileged to stand before you. I am honored and privileged to stand for you, and I ask you to stand with me.
Thank you, Patricia. We're thankful that you're here.
Thank you.
To represent us in the state of Nebraska. Our next speaker is Wilson Metz. Served in the United States Marine Corps for 50 years. He believes his oath of enlistment never expires. Amen. Director of the Heartland Men of Faith, pastor of Word of Hope Lutheran Church, Ashland, Nebraska. Was a Boy Scout and believes the Boy Scout motto is still important. Be prepared. I want to add to that. That's a lot of what we do. I'm the regional director for Nebraska Oath Keepers. And we have a center that we're getting ready to start a bunch of training this year, actually. Is that we're not charging to use the range. And so anybody that's interested in training and getting to know a lot of the other people in the Patriot community, everything from food preservation, preparedness, radio communications, alternative radio communications, everything that we would need if the worst case should happen, or even if a tornado comes through and knocks your town over, like we've seen how many times. All the things that our grandparents used to know and understand were important. We've forgotten those things, and it's going to come back to bite us really hard if we don't get smart again. Anyway, I want to turn it over to Wilson. Thank you very much.
Well, it's true that I was in the Marine Corps 50 years ago. I think I heard him say that I was in the Corps for 50 years. Okay. Well, you've had 5 eloquent speakers, and you've had 5 eloquent messages, and I'm here to change all of that. I was in the Boy Scouts, and the Scout motto is be prepared. Be prepared, which means you're always in a state of readiness in mind and body to do your duty. How many Marines do we have here? That's the second general order in the Marine Corps says, I am to walk my post in a military manner, keeping always on the alert and observing everything that takes place within sight or hearing. The Boy Scouts said it, the Marines said it, and as a pastor, the Word of God says it as well. Numerous times in the scriptures it talks about being alert. It talks about protecting your family. When Nehemiah was building a wall, he had a bunch of guys with swords and spears and bows and arrows to protect while what did he do? He built the wall. How about that? As a pastor, one of my favorite verses is from the book of Peter. It says, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Be alert. The devil is prowling out there, and we know that. Well, in the few minutes that I have today, I want to impress on you the need for churches. Churches need to have an emergency response team. Emergency response team. We need to have a facility team in case the lights go out, water main breaks, anything that would have to do with getting people into a safe place. We need to have a medical team. We need to have people who know how to use CPR. We need to know how to use the defibrillator machine. We need to know how to get a team together if somebody has a problem. They call 911. There's crowd control. All of that. That's very important. We need to have a security team. And the security team needs to have training in alertness. You don't just strap on a gun. You don't just take your big sword with you. You need alertness training. You need to look for people who have funny looks on their face. That's why they don't have me into my church very often. But you need to have people who know what to do when violence happens. They don't just scratch their head. They're practiced and they're trained and they get the job done. Weapons? Well, weapons are surely a tool, but it's the last tool we want to use. And in those few seconds, you have to determine, is this the time to use it? And there are weapons all through the Bible, and God has used men and women with weapons all through the Bible. And Jesus himself told his disciples, if you don't have a sword, which was the personal defense weapon of the day, sell your cloak and go buy one. I would tell you where it is, but I want you to read the Bible and find it for yourself. I'm just going to read this, short and sweet, but it's very much to the point. The man that should have been here today is doing active duty or active shooter training this weekend. But he's passionate. He would take a lot more of your time. The active shooter often may not have a specific individual target or victim, but the target can be a group of people housed in the building or even an institution itself. The target can be simply what the victim pool or institution represents. Active shootings usually happen with no warning and are over within minutes or even seconds, often before authorities have time to arrive and neutralize the shooter. Generally, churches are considered soft targets to the suspects. Churches have large numbers of unarmed people confined indoors in large auditorium-type settings. Church attendees are relaxed, especially when I'm preaching. They feel safe, and their attention is focused in one direction, usually on a speaker, singer on stage. There is little to no security present, especially armed security, and the building is unsecure and open for public access. Church facilities and campuses are designed architecturally to be welcoming and open places with multiple entrances and lots of glass. I like this sentence. This, plus the fact that many states ban law-abiding citizens to carry their concealed firearms in places of worship, are all contributing factors in making churches soft targets when active shooters select the location to commit their crime. This must change. It's time for the legislators to free churches from being gun-free zones. And I'm done.
Thank you, Wilson. Next up is Steve Reese. Steve Reese is a 24-year Army combat engineer veteran whose last assignment brought him to Nebraska. When he retired from the military in 2006, he and his wife decided to put down roots and fell in love with small-town America in Plattsburgh. Steve currently works as a systems engineer at Offutt Air Force Base. Steve is a student of history and of our Constitution. He became concerned for the direction our country was going in 2009 and eagerly participated in Tea Party rallies in Omaha and Washington, D.C. Upon realizing how massive and entrenched the corruption was in Washington, it's not just Washington, obviously, and that neither political party was interested in fixing things, Steve turned his energies to a larger solution. The larger solution is found right in the Constitution in Article 5. And here is Steve to talk about it. Thank you very much, Steve. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Here we go, Steve.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to start by disagreeing with the previous speaker. Wilson said he was not eloquent. I have to disagree with that. I wish I were half as eloquent as he is. And I say that as an Army guy talking about a Marine. So that's good. So thank you all for being here today in this weather. I drove out from Plattsburgh. It's about an hour and 15 minutes to get here, wondering how many people would be here. And the crowd is quite impressive. So it's keeping me warm. Thank you very much. I'd like to start off by saying, reading you something that one of our founding fathers did not say. But I think it's something that we've all heard. We've seen it passed around on the internet. We've probably maybe even passed it ourselves, thinking it was true. And we've read or heard that George Washington, he did not say this, but we've heard it, a free people ought not only be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. And again, George Washington did not say that. We think he might have meant it. We might interpret his words like that, but that's not how they spoke in 1790. That's how we speak today. And I think we agree with that sentiment, but we have to be careful when we see things that sounds like something we might say. That's where we fact check. Here's what Washington did say, where that was paraphrased from. And you got to bear with me, it's a little hard to get through, speaking in 1790 speak. 1790 to the Congress in January. A free people ought not only to be armed, but disciplined, to which end a uniform and well-digested plan is requisite, and their safety and interest require that they should promote such manufactories as tend to render them independent of others for essential, particularly military supplies. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue, so you can see why somebody rephrased that. But how did they think? How did our founding fathers think to give us this Constitution with such words in those early days? They spoke like that because the states had the power. The Constitution was given to make the federal government have a limited amount of power, as several of our speakers have said, and the individuals in the states were to retain that power. That's why he said those words, to be independent of others for essential, particularly military supplies. So we've got to ask ourselves, what happened? I think it's a tragedy that the city that bears his name, of this great man, a giant among our founding giants, that today is so antithetical, it's so opposite to Washington's principles of liberty. Consider for a minute some of Washington's principles that he spoke about. He didn't write a lot, but he spoke to Congress, and those are recorded. The divine origin of liberty. His belief that liberty has a price, that liberty is maintained by obedience to law. And again, we ask ourselves what happened. We're here today about liberty. So we consider our founding fathers' mindset. Think of Patrick Henry, another eloquent speaker. We've heard many of these words, but when you put them together in the context of where we are today, ask yourselves, is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains or slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not, you probably speak this with me, I know not, of course, what others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. So we ask ourselves, what happened? How did we get to where we are today among our civil discourse in this country? Our founding fathers knew the character of man. They discussed it. They didn't have television to watch at night, so they talked about the greats. They talked about the scholars and the philosophers, and they knew the character of man, and they knew they had to give us a constitution that would survive the corruption of man. And man's thirst for power has given us more than a century of unchecked erosion of our founding liberties. That is what's happened. It's happened gradually over time, and that's where we are today. The corruption is so invasive and so massive that it threatens our future. It has led to enormous debt, attacked or eliminated states' rights and people's liberties almost at every turn. There's no aspect of our lives today that this federal government is not involved with, and you've heard speaker after speaker talk about the enumerated rights, the enumerated powers of the government, and they're very well beyond that. And while we're here today, time is not on our side. We have not reached the end, but you can see what's happening. $21 trillion in debt. Our country is living large today at the expense of our children. We're not only failing fiscally, but we're failing morally to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Words you've already heard today. And there is a solution right in the Constitution that will help us secure the Second Amendment, secure the concept of federalism that makes our republic strong, and bring us back to what we need to secure our future. And that's Article 5. Article 5 in the Constitution is the article that talks about how do you amend the Constitution. We know what amendments are. We know what the Second Amendment is. The original Constitution is written, didn't have that in it. It was an amendment put in there. So how do you do that? You turn to Article 5, and it says that it's a very simple process. Article 5 is about that long. You can read it 10 times in the amount of time I'm sitting here talking to you. It's a very short, very sweet. You propose an amendment, and then you ratify the amendment. Two-step process. You propose an amendment, and you ratify it. How do you propose an amendment? There's two methods for that. The one that we're familiar with is it goes through Congress. 2/3 of the houses of Congress have to pass the wording of the amendment, and then it goes out to the states for ratification. The other way to do it, which we have not done yet, is for the states to call a convention. We need 2/3 of the states, 34 states, to call for a convention to propose amendments. The states get together at a convention, they write a proposed amendment, and then it goes out to the states for ratification, the same as before. So if you follow that, you see that one originates in Congress and then goes to the states. The other originates in the states and then goes to the states. So if your intent is to modify the behavior in Washington, D.C., which route do you think we have to go?
State to state.
Got to go through the states. Congress will never put into place a constitutional amendment. They will not propose one to limit their own power. It's just not going to happen, whether it's balanced budget or term limits or restriction of jurisdiction. So that's why we have today the Convention of States project, which is the most serious and the one with the most potential to have longest to long-term benefit to our country. It is well on the way to achieving the results. That's what we need to learn about today. In our unicameral, this is known as LR6, Legislative Resolution 6, and with this session almost over, it is unlikely that we're going to see it succeed this year. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But LR6 has the same exact language as language in the other 49 states for this resolution, and that is to impose fiscal restraint on the federal government, impose term limits on the elected and appointed officials in the federal government, and to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. Those three categories, and that is it. If something doesn't fall into one of those categories, it will not be discussed at the convention. So this process is a safe one. There are folks out there that don't want this to happen. And those are the folks that want to maintain a big and powerful federal government, ever-growing federal government, massive debt, and those types of things. They want to maintain that. But this process is safe, and they will tell you it's not. They will tell you that this process could take away the Second Amendment. And there is nobody in their right mind that can explain how that could happen. If you read the Constitution, it's not in there. There's nothing in any of the documents that support any even close to that could happen. In fact, the only thing that could happen out of this with the Second Amendment is make it stronger by having the federal government have its power limited. When that federal power gets limited, the liberties of the people in the states increase. So in terms of where we are in the United States, we need 34 states to pass this resolution to call for the convention. We have 12. We want Nebraska to become the 13th state. We're looking at that. There are a number of other states that are very close. It's a multi-year process. This has been going on for several years. It'll go on for several more years. We don't want this to happen overnight. This is a lasting and deep solution to a lasting and deep problem. Because the problem's taken so long to come about, it's not going to get fixed overnight. In Nebraska, we have a handful of senators that are blocking progress on this. Most Nebraskans don't know that we need 33 votes in the unicameral to make something happen, to affect change. We have 49 senators. A simple majority will get a bill passed. That's only 25. The 33 is that super majority that's needed for a cloture vote. Cloture is that word that means stop debating and vote on it. They need 33 votes. It's an incredible hurdle. To get an override on a governor's veto only takes 30 votes. So if Governor Ricketts vetoes something, 30 votes will override that, but they need 33 votes in the unicameral to stop debate and vote on it. Another thing to keep in mind, as you talk to your senators, if they say they vote yes, that counts as a yes vote. Anything else is a no vote. So if they say, I don't have a position on it, I'm not blocking it. Unless they cast a yes vote, that's not true. If they cast a present not voting, that counts as a no. Because regardless of how many senators vote, you need 33 yes votes. Everything else is a no vote. So don't let them wiggle out of that when you talk to them. They like to do that. They like to not go on record. This will come up again in 2019. So it'll come around as a convention of states proposal, just supporting that. With another amendment with it, it's actually a bill that will talk about the delegates. You'll see that one as well. So how do we help? How can we make this happen? One is to read and understand the Constitution. They have a thing called the Pocket Constitution, so you keep it in your pocket. Put tabs on it where the important stuff is, which is almost all of it. Highlight the yellow parts that you want to talk to your friends about. If you don't have one of these, we brought some with us. You can see Joe or Ernie here. We've got plenty of these to go around. So how else can you help? You learn about our founding liberties. Become a student of history, a student of liberty, and learn how we can keep those liberties. This is a teaching opportunity. How else can we help? By teaching. It seems that some of our friends and neighbors know more about the feudal form of government in Game of Thrones and the ethics and morals and law and order in The Walking Dead than they do about American founding principles. Okay, let's use that to our advantage. We can explain why we got away from a king in the first place and why we don't want to let our nation devolve into anarchy. Those are good discussions to have. And then you can bring out the Constitution. How else can you help? Find out where your senator is on LR6. Ask him or her, did you vote for cloture on LR6? Did you sign the cloture card for LR6? And again, don't let them wiggle out of it. They're either on board or they're not. We had 31 on board. 31 senators on board. We needed 33. That's 18 no votes. How else can you help? You go to conventionofstates.com and sign the petition. We have 3.5 million Americans to date that signed the petition. That's up about 3 million over where we were a couple years ago. It's growing rapidly. The opposition is powerful. The activists on the opposite side will always attack our Second Amendment rights. We know that. And now is the time not to be on the defensive, but to be on the offensive. On the offensive, not with weapons, but with the Constitution. The strongest weapon we've got. I'll leave you with one last point to remember. You've heard others refer to this. Many of us took a solemn oath. We raised our hand and took a solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then we said we would bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And we closed with, so help me God. What most of us don't know is that every official, every government official, from city up to the federal level, takes that same oath. They raise their hand and they speak the words. So you have to ask yourself, do those folks in government that have all taken that oath at every level understand the Constitution well enough to support and defend it? And if they don't know the Constitution, why are they in office? And if they do know the Constitution, why are they not defending it? Important questions. So we ask ourselves what happened. We now know what happened. You ask yourself, what can you do about it? There's actions we can take. What can your neighborhood do about it? And most importantly, we ask and follow, what can we the people do about it? So thank you very much.
Yeah! Steve Reese at the National Rally for the Second
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is also one of the organizers. I want to thank her and Jeremy. Where are you at, Jeremy? Raise your hand over there, brother. I want to thank him. I want to thank you guys for taking the initiative to get the permits and to get this thing rolling. Everybody give them a hand. And those are the kind of things that give us a fighting chance. You know, we've got social media, we've got all these other things going on, and we use those if we're smart to the best of our ability to try to win the war of ideas so it doesn't become a bloody one. Okay, but it's actually getting it out here in the streets, getting out here, getting to know people, preparing, training, the other things that we do. And first of all, build a community, which, trust me, we're going to need soon. And secondly, you know, create the momentum to get their attention that they better listen to us. Okay, so I'm going to bring Trish Cook in. She's our next speaker. Give her a hand.
It is amazing how many of you guys are out here in this. My name is Trish Cook. I am the secretary for the 3% United Patriots of Nebraska, which is just a patriot group that helps with training, guns, survival, all of that stuff. And we kind of got the call to set up this organization, to set up this rally. And my purpose today was to speak to the mothers and the women in this group, which is amazing how many women are out here. But one thing I have noticed being in 3% United Patriots and in any patriot group, any gun group, is the lack of women. Women, more than anything, need to know how to shoot a gun. Women are 2 or 3 times more likely to be the victim of a crime than a man because we look frail, we look innocent. Media portrays us as weak women or damsels in distress. We need to be rescued. And it's time to change that. We need to show that women can be just as strong as men, if not more powerful. For the mothers out here, mothers know the hell that we go through as moms. We don't go to work, come home, get to relax, and be done. Motherhood is a 24/7 job. Sorry, it's cold. I'm trying to think. I have 2 6-year-olds and I have a 7-year-old. My life is hectic. And the reason I want to carry a gun is to protect my children. Everyone knows that mama bears are nothing to be poked at. Don't mess with the mama bear's kids. And that is the reason why women need to carry. That's the reason why women and mothers need to carry, to protect their children. Schools have proven they're not going to do it. And, sorry, we need to protect our children. If someone breaks in your home and your husband's not there, are you going to be able to protect your children? Do you know how to load that gun? Do you know where the gun is? Do you know how to shoot somebody to protect your children? And as mothers, we need to also bring our kids back to this way of thinking, the conservative way of thinking. We obviously can't rely on schools to teach our children about their liberties, about their rights. It is on us to teach our children what is right and wrong, to not let our children be entitled to think that they just deserve to have everything handed to them. The schools are teaching our kids that you guys can do it. You know, everything should be given to you. You guys deserve a participation trophy just because you showed up. It is on us as parents to teach our children that they have to work for what they get. You want to prevent gun accidents. You know, they say, oh, a kid could shoot yourself. How could you have a kid, gun in your home? It's all on parents to teach their kids how to use a firearm properly, how to safely use a firearm, and how to behave around a firearm. If you teach your children common sense with guns, children aren't going to go say, hey, look at this gun, and shoot their friend in the face. So I want to encourage those of you who have wives, girlfriends, whatever, that aren't here today, to go out and shoot, to learn how to protect themselves. A woman carrying is going to stop gun violence because they're not going to any longer look like targets. Thank you guys for coming out today. Sorry it's short and sweet. I just try not to chat.
Garrett's our next speaker. He's one of the organizers. I want to really thank him and everybody else, Wilson and Gary and Alan and so forth, everybody that helped get this thing ready. I really want to thank you guys. Give them a hand.
I've come here today to talk about preserving our Second Amendment rights. As a father of 5 young children, I can never know what the future has in store for our family or each of them. I do not believe for a second the world is now safe or intellectually superior enough to dictate what firearms or tools us and our children may need in the future. I have watched over the course of my life many horrible things mankind can do to one another. I've heard Holocaust and World War II survivor stories from first person, and our children will never have this opportunity. Most of these people here know this history and the cost involved of repeating it. So we need to pass anything we know on to our kids. It's too important for us to let these experiences stop at us. We cannot control the future, but right now we have a voice to pass down what tools, experience, and rights are passed down to the next generation. I'm just speaking from a father's standpoint. Can we do better to pass down the tools of self-defense and protect our children at school or friends at a function? I say it's all hand in hand. I believe we have fallen behind in some areas, such as school protection with upgraded technology and armed security inside the building tailored for each school's needs. And we've really got to tackle mental health. I am not an expert in this field, but I'm sure if we spoke to these experts, we could dissect the problems as a community and try and untangle this mess that we have. We need to do it without denying rights or due process. These problems that demand some serious thought do not give up our free market principles and keep our rights intact, along with facing the real problems of 21st century society. The only way I can see doing this is setting up coalitions who meet regularly, who believe in what our founders' principles were, along with what we are facing now, and form ideas and try and get them out to our representatives and to the public. That's not what we're getting now. We're getting a generation completely ready to give up real freedom for what they believe in, believe to be an easy fix. So it's our time to come up with these ideas, to ease the problems of society, and to preserve our rights to pass to the next, or someone else will. And they are. Each time chipping away a sliver of rights every opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Garrett. Taylor Royal is from Omaha. He's going to say some words for us. Another young man, which I appreciate. My kids always tell me I know the Bible so well because I lived through it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Nebraskans, Americans, fellow Second Amendment patriots. It's a great day on this crisp day in April. I think that's one way to describe it. But it is a great day to stand with you in unity and other Second Amendment patriots across this country. Reminder, we are the majority, and it's time to have our voice heard. My name is Taylor Royal. I'm grateful to be speaking with you guys today as a candidate for Nebraska State Treasurer, a Republican, conservative, and a fellow Second Amendment advocate. I'm blessed to be a citizen of this great country, a Nebraskan, a supporter of our President Trump, his agenda, and an NRA member. I'm unapologetically an American. I believe that we are the greatest country on earth because of God's blessing, our freedom, and our God-given rights that no